Yeah.
Miros. Yes.
Okay. Dear colleagues and friends, thank you for joining us today with our next debate on taxes. Basically, as we start to cure ourselves of swearing, another income tax is due, and we're going to talk about that. Taxes are enacted as a part of government activities, basically, and the tax system of the country is used to encourage certain economic activities or convey benefits to certain group of beneficiaries. To have a better understanding about the advantages and disadvantages of these two particular taxes that we see in the board, income taxes and consumption taxes, our panel today consists of Durs Shahini, senior tax official in the London office of Deloitte, Hana Tahiri, economic professor at LSE, London School of Economics, Eranda Bazi, head of Tax Administration Reforms Commission, and Dora Musa, editor-in-chief of National Tax Journal. Without wasting any more time, we basically start with the first question to Durs. Can you explain briefly the definition of income taxes and how they are provided in the
Yes, thank you for having me. So let's think of the economy as composed of households and businesses apart from the government. So households and businesses have to pay taxes on their earned income. That is for households, let's say for workers or individuals, they have to pay taxes, income taxes on their wages. And for businesses, they have to pay income taxes on their profits. Furthermore, we have different designs of this tax system, for example, progressive or regressive tax systems. But also, these taxes also depend whether the household is consistent of a single parent, single individual, married, or married but filing separately.
So, by definition, since we have to start some on definition grounds, basically to see what income taxes and consumption taxes mean. Dora, by definition, how do consumption taxes differ in comparison to the income taxes?
Well, basically, government, which taxing regime decides to implement, there are going to be advantages and disadvantages. However, the aim is to minimize the bad effects that happen in such implementation of taxing systems. Consumption taxes, in contrary to the income taxes, are taxes levied on goods and services, which happen at the point of transaction, like in supermarkets, whenever you buy something, and are very easily to be collected and cannot be avoided. But the main difference between consumption and income taxes is because in consumption taxes, savings are not penalized. If a person earns, or his disposable income is, for example, $100, he spends $80 and saves 20 others, he's going to be taxed only on the amount consumed. So the savings are not penalized. He can save those money and then invest later. Generally speaking, there are two consumption taxes. The general one, which includes a range of broad products such as food, clothes, whatever. In Kosovo, there is 45% of revenues that come from such general consumption taxes. And the second one is the excise taxes that are mostly imposed to luxury goods such as alcohol, cigarettes, fuel, etc. So pretty much the aim is to have a good implementation and to have an administrative control over consumption taxes, and this kind of tax regime seems to fulfill such criteria. Therefore, there is a trend of countries moving to fully implement the consumption taxes and abandon the income taxes. However, there are cases that you can find both of these tax regimes, such as in Kosovo, we have both.
Okay. We know that the importance of the income tax system is its modification of income and or expenses. Now, having this in mind, the government's influence basically, what is the government's influence to add the balance in terms of fairness in regards to the income tax system?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having us. And I think all the panelists here would agree that government, in order to finance its expenditures, it needs revenues. And one of the ways, as most of you know, is that one of the ways that it earns those revenues is through taxes. And one of the most appropriate ways of collecting those taxes is income taxation. We know that every country has its poor and rich citizens. And of course, the poor citizens are unfortunate, whether the rich are more fortunate. So in order to add fairness, the government has levied this progressive income taxation, which the audience doesn't know is, for example, the more you earn, then the more you will pay the taxes. This is a good system because those people who do not have enough money or who are poor actually do pay a little amount of tax or do not pay nothing at all. So, in order to distribute or to create an equity or fairness in the society, the government takes those money that the rich taxpayers pay and distributes it to the poor people. And this does not only affect the poor people, but the country as a whole, because the government does not only provide, for example, food or education or health to poor people, but it also spends those money in national income, highways, etc., which also will benefit the rich people.
Okay. Different countries around have different consumption taxing systems. For example, in US, we have consumption taxes that are only imposed in retail sales, while in European Union imposes a broad-based consumption tax, as Dora mentioned, or VAT. Why the difference?
So generally, the consumption tax in the US is imposed on retail sales, so it's not imposed on the sales during the distribution chain. But in contrast, the European Union imposes a broad-based consumption tax, or a VAT, which is a tax on the value added of goods and services. So the VAT is present in more than 130 countries in the world. So it's the fastest growing taxing system. So this, under the broad-based consumption tax of VAT, the tax is charged as a percentage of the price of the product or service, and it is charged and collected throughout each stage of the distribution chain or production stages. So, for example, when a manufacturer sells its products to a retailer or a wholesaler, it has to collect the VAT tax. So the net VAT that, for example, a manufacturer pays to tax authorities would be the output VAT, which it collects from when it sells to retailers, and minus the input VAT, which it paid when it bought the resources to produce the goods and services. So this difference is mainly that VAT may be simpler to implement, also to operate and enforce than the income tax, as well as the consumption tax on retail sales. So, and there are many issues with the consumption tax on retail sales in the United States, where there are certain sales which people don't know if to consider them retail sales or not, and to pay taxes on those, and whether certain businesses have enough connections with the jurisdiction in order to collect taxes on behalf of.
There is no specification on, basically, from the point of retail sales, there is no specification of taxes which have to be basically established,
Yes.
which not.
But once we get too much into details, I would like to mention that the consumption taxes are generally generated from the consumption of goods and services within the state. Therefore, if people have more to save, they will invest more domestically. Therefore, the businesses will have much more to provide the goods and services to our citizens. With that being said, the sales of the state increase together with the revenues. The tax evasion also is one factor, because once you buy products, you can't escape to paying tax. While in income, there can be some circumstances where people will try to avoid or find ways to escape such paying taxes.
Okay. You had your viewpoint in terms of consumption taxes. Now we're going to shift our discussion to more income taxes. How you mentioned the progressive and regressive as forms of establishing an income tax system, but how can they influence the behavior of individuals, and are those exactly the models of equity in terms of income taxing system? I mean, in terms of poor people, yes, but what about the rich people? Can they accept paying a progressive income tax, and what is the influence of that?
It is true that these taxes actually influence the behavior of certain companies or individuals, and this is done mainly, for example, by tax credits or deductions. If I can exemplify this, for example, if you have a company or corporation which has an equipment that reduces the pollution in a society, then the government has incentives to provide them with a tax deduction or tax credit, which is a reduction from the total amount that they have to pay in tax at the end of the year. And this is a sort of incentives for them to continue producing or using that equipment, which is economically, environmentally friendly. Another example would be, for example, if the government wants to make people use the health insurance. And in order to do that, they can set a law or implement a law which would penalize all the people who do not have health insurance. And this way, all the people would have to buy the insurance. This is some of the ways that the government influences the behaviors. And regarding whether the progressive tax is okay for the rich people, I think yes, because rich people have money. And why not pay that amount of tax and help the poor people into them having a more developed life and
Okay. Yeah, because the idea of economic growth within a developing country mostly is that with the increase in investment, basically there is an incentive to a more economic growth, and basically rich people tend to save less when they have more money because they spend those money in luxury goods, they spend those money in, I don't know, vacations and all. And increasing the taxes does it create a distortion in terms of savings and consumption? And I mean, progressive tax is okay for the whole society, for the well-being of society, but there are pros and cons in terms of poor people and rich people as well. However, what is the explanation behind, Dora, behind the saying that a pure consumption tax system encourages economic growth?
So many economists are pro to implementing consumption taxing system. However, I would like to mention three economic concepts here. The first one is economic growth, equity, and efficiency. Economic growth, because as I mentioned previously, if you have a disposable income, you consume something and you say that you have an incentive over time to invest. When investments increase, capital increase. You have new jobs created, you have unemployment rate decreased. So pretty much you move, productivity increases and you move towards the economic growth. Another factor is that consumption taxing system does not have an incentive to change the behavior of the citizens to work. So they will benefit more by working more. So there's an economic efficiency. And the consumption taxes are basically equal for all the citizens, so there's an equity. Furthermore, an economic downturn, for example, such as recessions, people are still going to consume something. So they're still going to generate income or revenue to the government. So by implementing consumption taxing regime, economy does not miss any benefits. So you have more investments and savings of the people are transformed into more investments.
We talked about the progressive or regressive income taxing system and their incentives to consume and to save, but mostly we talk from the rich point of view, the rich people point of view. And those, what is the, or maybe to rephrase the question, how do progressive and or regressive income taxing system affects the incentives to save in terms of the society as a whole?
Alright, so let's get this straight, what progressive and regressive means.
Okay.
Progressive tax system is basically a tax system where people with high incomes pay higher taxes, those with lower incomes pay lower taxes, whereas in the progressive tax system, it's the complete opposite. Those with low income pay higher taxes, those with high income pay lower taxes. So the United States has a progressive tax system, and basically this is what I call the Robin Hood scheme, because you take money from the rich and distribute it to the poor. So high income people pay high taxes, and low income pay low taxes. As we know, economic growth is partly dependent, economic development is partly dependent on economic growth, which is also dependent on investment and savings. So this is what you asked me. And what I can tell you is that, as we know, financial markets, how they work, they allocate savings to investments. So basically, those with low and middle income, basically households, have the incentives to save, whereas businesses have the incentives to invest. So we can allocate resources in this savings from households to businesses, and we can have economic growth, which can lead to economic development in the future.
What are some common methods that seek to prevent a consumption tax from being regressive?
One of the main concerns of the consumption tax is that it's regressive, that it means that because low-income people tend to spend most of their income or even more, and high-income people tend to save more, so the consumption tax is the tax burden is going to be most on the low-income people, but this is mainly on the short term, because on the long term the consumption tax tends to be more equal, because the consumption that the money that they save and they invest, actually that they save and invest will eventually be consumed at some point in time, so there will be more consumption in the end. And also in aspect of the short term, there are some methods that can make the consumption tax less regressive. One of the common ways is to exempt some products from the tax or lower the VAT tax for certain products. For example, most countries have lower VAT, for example, on food, healthcare, education, water supply, clothes, children clothing, especially for children. So by doing this, the low-income people do not have to pay taxes on basic necessities, but everybody has to pay some percent tax on non-necessary goods and services. Also, another approach is, as John said, that the United States has a very progressive tax system, but shown by an OECD research shows that even though it is very progressive, because the US doesn't spend very much on the poor, it means that it doesn't distribute income as much as other developed countries. So another way to help this, another way is not to focus on the tax system, but to focus on the spending, so to help the poor. You could have the taxes and spend more on the poor. And the final way, in order to design is, we can design a consumption tax that is progressive in nature. So it's kind of an income tax where you charge taxes not on the whole income, but income minus saving, which is by definition consumption. So which means that households will deduct deposit and saving accounts from the income, also will deduct expenditures on investment, on stocks from the income, and will pay taxes on the remaining part of the income.
Okay. The last question is open to discussion. Basically, what can the government do, and which is a better system, income tax system or consumption tax? And can these income and consumption, and can these two taxing systems basically live together with one government policy package?
They can be doing possible.
But I mean,
Yes, but I think income tax is better. Why? Because in income, for example, you have 10,000 euros wage.
Yeah.
And in that wage, then the government will take, as a whole, will take the revenue as a percentage. Whereas in consumption tax, you pay taxes on what you consume. So people tend not to consume, therefore the government will not have enough revenues. So if you look at the income tax side, the government is collecting its revenues anyways. Whereas in consumption tax, people choose whether to consume or not, so the government does not collect efficiently all the revenues. And as you said, in times of recessions, the government cannot do anything because in recession people tend not to consume.
Yeah, I said like not to consume luxury goods, but they still need basic
Yeah.
basic products such as milk, bread, basic stuff.
Let's talk about that basic stuff and about savings of low-income people, because you mentioned earlier that the VAT value-added tax is fairly, it's equal.
Yes.
But when you come to really think about it, let's say a low-income people earns only $800 a month, whereas someone earns $100,000 a month, and they both have to consume those goods. So you will pay basically more than 50 or 80%, you will spend more than 50 to 80% of your income on those goods, whereas a rich guy will only spend a
Therefore,
fraction of his income.
I would like to take
So
an
it's
example of VAT, as I've mentioned. We have exemptions from the paying of taxes for poor people. We have rebates and deductions. The VAT relevant range, the lowest is 5%, and it reaches until 22%. So the higher is not allowed, but also you can go like below 5%. In Kosovo, we have 8%, the lowest rate of VAT, and the highest is 16% until 2015. And recently it has been increased to 18% because we're still trying to protect the poor households, but we are imposing
It should not be.
higher taxes for rich people and for businesses. Therefore, they have to pay more taxes so we can protect the
Yes.
people.
However, even though the citizens tend to save more, they are not, even they save more, they are helping the economic growth of the country. They're creating more job opportunities, and also they are not enjoying that money. So
Thank you for supporting my point.
But
You will save on low income, but in the
You-
you cannot.
but through the consumption tax, you will not hurt the savings, and you will, and those people will not enjoy that consumption, and eventually that consumption will not be used in the future. So
So basically what you're trying to say is that we have volatility in consumption taxes. We cannot.
volatility is also in the income tax, because
It's higher on
because
VAT.
you know,
Because you don't know.
the problem is that also income tax is becoming very volatile in the recent years, because many people, the income is mostly based on income from capital. So because capital is very volatile, also the tax on the income can become very volatile, especially from the
Your-
financial crisis.
Consumption tax is very wrong. You said that people, for example, the VAT tax tends to have a smaller percentage of essential goods.
It gets valued by
Yes.
22%.
So on higher goods, you're expecting from the rich people to pay like the largest part of the revenues.
Exactly.
Yes. So if you compare this with region and you have a higher tax on consumption, then if the rich people contribute mostly to the revenues of the country, then why those people, then this would make these people go to Shkop, for example, and buy clothes and other luxury goods, not contributing to the economy of the country, and this therefore would harm the businesses as well as the economy.
Okay, now let me clear up something. The VAT is a tax which includes not only the final consumer, it includes also the production and distribution channel. Therefore, there is going to be a higher or larger burden into the group of rich people. An increase in VAT, in this case, does not provide any equity, as in general consumption taxes, but still, the poor people are the ones that matter in our society, as we know that we're not
How can they
very
matter when you
stable.
only tax
Which
goods and
class?
services, but you don't tax, for example, stocks and bonds? That's what rich people buy.
You have progressive income taxes in terms of rich people, and you have basically consumption taxes that rich people pay more toward the goods that have a higher VAT. Which hurts less in terms of rich people? Do they accept on paying a higher income tax, or basically do they consume more of those goods that have a
The
higher
difference
VAT?
people,
between
of course, rich
16% and
people will support
80%,
Consumption taxes.
which
Why?
involves more luxury
Because they
goods
tend not to
that the
consume
rich will
those.
pay. The difference is
Yeah.
between like 1.2 until 0.2 until 0.4. The difference between such an increase in percentage of VAT. So they won't be that much hurt, in comparison.
Yes, but everybody would rather have this consumption tax. For example, also rich people, because they tend not to, if the tax increases, then they would tend not to consume that good. So this would harm economy.
But
Yes,
therefore,
because
I'm
they're
saying
only
it's not
focusing
an
on the
increase,
1% of the 1%.
a high increase in
not
prices, so they
focusing on
won't
the
change their
99%.
behavior.
Any final thoughts upon the topics discussed? If not, thank you for being here, and it was a lovely discussion. Any questions or comments from the audience are welcome. Professor?
I have two questions. Dora, when initially you argued against the income taxes, the main concern was that income taxes can be evaded. people can hide income. Is your fear maybe based on the weakness of the tax administration?
Yes.
Because otherwise, when the tax administration works properly, why not move to a broader tax base? If they say income tax is everything, but consumption only fraction of income, then why not move to the comprehensive income and tax everything, a larger tax base? So if your concern is not the
Kosovo has laws, but they're not very good implemented. Therefore, consumption tax base would be better because as people buy, they will immediately assign the cost of taxes into their purchase. In comparison to the income, people will try somehow to evade because as the income increases, they're still going to pay higher taxes. Therefore, avoidance and evasion will be reduced.
That's why we collect those income taxes before you even receive the paycheck.
This would increase revenues more. The government has more revenues than they spend more.
But the point is, what
But
about
the
the informal
consumption-
economy?
The consumption also brings revenues to the government. 45% of the GDP comes from
Of course,
such,
we're talking about
tax
paying the
system.
taxes. That's why I'm saying that you collect the taxes before you receive the paycheck.
You take for example the informal economy, basically those people that work and are not registered as full-time employee or as part-time employee, they do not pay income taxes, but they consume something. And when they consume, they basically benefit to the state, right?
But also
Yes,
you
but
want,
also the consumption tax is not that good implemented in Kosovo.
and you want to have for workers, for example.
I mentioned that in the beginning, like everything has advantages and disadvantages.
Of course.
However, our aim is to just minimizing such bad
Yes.
effects in our society.
Yeah, but both have costs. So.
And the second question is for Aaron. When the tax base for consumption taxes is smaller than the tax base for income taxes, automatically you need a larger tax rate to get the equivalent amount of revenue. Does this discourage consumption and motivates people to something that Anna mentioned, so that people will try to live in the country and maybe enjoy spending in the neighborhood? Or even worse, then once people get retired, they completely avoid paying taxes by moving to other countries that also have income taxes, so not consumption tax.
Yes, but however, with income tax, we are hurting the savings. So if you use the consumption tax, we will have savings, we will have economic growth. But also that is a disadvantage. That yeah, the disadvantage of the consumption tax. So
I would like to mention that the excessive consumption tax will
Yeah.
reduce the spending of the citizen and therefore will decrease the economic activity. Therefore, people will tend to go more expensive products.
Because there is an
Rather
example
than-
in Europe that
Yes,
has
for-
high consumption
if
tax
VAT
like
goes up-
Switzerland, and that's why people go buy in neighboring countries.
So if VAT actually reaches 22 or even higher, even though I'm not sure whether they allow it to be above 22%, this will be counted as an excessive consumption payment and therefore consequences will be.
Okay, Ban has a question.
I have a question for all of you. Consumption tax discourages consumption, while income tax encourages people to pursue more leisure activities. Which is better for the country? I mean, to discourage consumption or to discourage people to work? Because as Professor mentioned, in Switzerland, the consumption is discouraged, but still the country is doing really well on their revenues.
You don't discourage work for by income taxes. Why is that? Because, as I mentioned, we have progressive taxes. And basically, those with lower incomes pay lower taxes, so their incentive to work to earn more.
Yeah.
And about the rich people who pay higher taxes, you cannot disincentive the Wall Street guy who earns $10 million a year to work less because he got taxed.
You don't use perfect examples. Just use a simple example.
Yes,
If
because
you
simple-
just work
easy to
1
understand.
hour more, for example, and after you deduct the taxes, the amount you pay, the cost for this hour, there's no benefit between the cost and what is left after the taxes. So it doesn't have, people don't have the
Can you
incentive
take me one
to.
example, one rich guy who stopped working because he got taxed?
You take
Or
a
he
perfect
started
example.
working less?
You take a perfect example.
Course not.
But those rich guys you use are just a small portion of the overall population. You have to look at the common guy who just
Yes, I'm looking at the common guy, the 90% of the population, as I'm saying. Represent the progressive tax system, those with low income pay low taxes. So low taxes don't disincentive you to work.
as we have progressive taxes in Kazakhstan and Kosovo between, I forgot the percentages. If just 1 hour more moves your percentage to a higher percentage of taxation, then maybe you earn just $20 for this 1 hour more, you pay on this $20 maybe $10 taxes, you have just 10
You want
left.
the
But
country
the
with
cost
low
of
taxation.
the cost for you of working 1 hour is maybe just these $10 you earn. So it comes up that you work for zero. You get as much as it costed for you. I mean,
I think that would incentivize you to work a couple more hours
No.
so that you make up for it.
Yeah, but you are not
But
able
this
to work
incentivizes
as
you.
much as you want, perhaps.
It's not the tax that discourages workers, it's the
No
value that
debate
they
among
expect.
economists.
I don't know anyone in Kosovo, since we have progressive taxation, I haven't heard anyone in Kosovo who says, I don't want to work. We all look forward to finding better jobs with better salaries, and we don't complain about the tax. This all depends on the rate that the government the tax rate that the government implements. And of course, government, before implementing these policies about taxation, they see which policies are best. For example, those that do not disincentivize people to work.
But
So
also the
It
return.
depends on the benefits. I use an example of Germany. If the cost or the effort you put into that work doesn't equal to a certain amount of benefits, then it's not worth working it. That's what I mean. You say that if you earn enough, it's of course if you earn enough. But if the work,
That's why Germany is a powerful economy in the world, it has income taxes.
yeah, but
very high.
I use a personal
So you should
example.
go advise Germany
I don't have to advise nobody, but I use a personal example. When you don't see any incentives to work an additional hour or an additional something, because of the taxes you have to pay for this additional amount.
maybe that also depends on how strong the country is, because in Kosovo we have high unemployment and we wouldn't care. We only look forward to work. And as well as where in Germany we have the opportunity
to make the
choose
trade-off
among
between
jobs that's
Working and not working.
But also the return, like what you get from the-
Yeah, the benefits.
Yeah, the benefits always like outweigh the costs, so should.
Not always.
So we're looking to save more, so we can have more money in the future for future spending and to consume more in the future.
I think he's taking a reference
For
on
me,
one
that's a
country.
return.
You should look at the way that the policy is drafted. You can do better at drafting the policy. Maybe not tax someone for if he or she passes this for about 10 euros additional
But it's
that you're
how-
mentioning.
It's
You
how
can do a better,
progressive it is.
you can do a better targeting system. You have to draft it better.
Okay, if there is no other question or comment, thank you for coming.
Yeah.